Writers, I'm going to get you started on your Memoir Brainstorm. So on Monday, we started looking at memoirs, thinking about what they have, and dove deeply into the beginnings of some great memoirs so that you can understand what goes into writing a great. All of this was to, of course, first of all, let you give you that you can best understand memoirs when reading them, and then ultimately so that you can write a memoir. So you're going to be filling out this page here. I'm going to be filling it out for me, what my pre-writing would look like. So while I'm filling this out, you are not writing down what I am writing. This is my memoir, not yours. So you do not write down what I am writing. But before we get to the memoirs that we have looked at. So this was the first one that we looked at, and this was the center of our mini lesson, Born to Live, Bred to Die. So this actually comes from a book called Diary of a Freedom Writer. Let's think about the things we had to remember about memoirs. First of all, we know the first person point of view. So our author, all throughout the book, uses words like I and my, I, me, okay? So that's a must. Another piece that we know memoirs have to have is that it's an important memory. So what this book is written about is his adolescence. So we know from this, he talks about when he was 9. Really the main focus is his teenage years. So this is like when he goes into high school. That's an important memory, and it's not a long span of time, it's just a few years of his life. And so this is a reflection of that time, the experience he had there. And then of course we know that we have to include feelings. So we had right in the beginning that he felt like he was growing up. There was kind of a debate amongst y'all, which was really great. It's like, well, was he scared or was he numb to it because he was so used to it? Both very interesting feelings to have, but he had something there to reflect on. And the other piece memoirs have to have is imagery. Some descriptive language that's strong enough to help the reader visualize. And this started off with some really strong imagery of waking up to the sound of bullets. So that was one piece that we looked at. And the other one, My Name, this came from a book called Mango Street. And this is full with all these little short stories, and they all came from her life, Sandra Cisneros' life, while she lived on this house on Mango Street. So she took that particular moment of her life that meant a lot to her and wrote a bunch of stories about it. The next one that we had was from a book called My 13th. So this was about when she was 13, her 13th year. And you'll see right here, a memoir. Here we got like a little flashback to when she was in kinder, but you get some foreshadowing here that this will be mostly about her 13th winter. So it's just that 1 year of her life, something very important. The last one that we had was Look Straight Ahead. And this one actually came from a book called Hole in My Life. So this might make the beginning sentence make more sense to you. The prisoner in the photograph is me. That's what he's talking about. So I really like the title of this memoir because it really shows what a memoir is, that it is that one important memory out of his. This was the hole in it, okay? So he didn't write about his whole life. He wrote about the year that he was locked up, the bleakest year of his life. So what we got here was how that was. We got lots of imagery about the brutality, the gross food. We know how he felt. He was living in misery. And when you go through the book, he explains the whole experience. So in all of these books, the authors learned something. They came out of the experience, changed somehow. So that's what you want to focus on. So what Ms. Schumann and I have created for y'all is a memoir brainstorm to help you figure out, okay, well, if I were to write about something important in my life, what would I write about? So you can think about it two ways. You can think about conflicts that you have in your life, or you can think about memorable moments. And of course, you don't have to fill this out in any particular order. So I'm just going to write down a few. I would like you to, do as much as you can. For the sake of time, I'm just going to jot down a few that come to mind automatically. So when I think about conflicts in my life, and I think about me versus others, I think about a particular scene in my life. I think about when I was y'all's age and kind of in high school. So I would say junior high and high school. Just that experience in my life. There was a lot of bullying going on for me because I dressed differently, and I was just kind of weird and quiet and reading books all the time. So things during that time. When I think about friends, I might think about some positive moments. So I might think about maybe when I met my best friend, or times when I lost friends. So there was some times in college when, not like lost, like we just weren't friends anymore, when I lost college friends. So this would also be a conflict, but it's also memorable, and it has to do. When I think about family, I think about when my brother went to rehab. That was a very big piece of my 13th year. That was a rough time for my family. When I think about something on the positive side, I might think about my first year of teaching. Right now, I'm just kind of thinking about, okay, what are important pieces of my life? And I'll just fill it up according to that. This box here, inner conflict, this could be anything that you get on yourself about, like things that you feel within yourself. So like there were times when I was unhappy with myself because I didn't have enough motivation. I didn't know so I actually might think about that. Like in college, I felt lost. And so that would be a really good thing for me to write about, because I could talk about that journey and how I finally found my way when I wanted to be a teacher. Versus society, this might be any like problems with like authority. So maybe when I was a junior in high school, I had a really big problem with my chemistry teacher. This is just something I can think about right now, but I don't know if it would make a very strong memoir, because compared to all of these other places in my life, I don't know if that would be the strongest, but I'm going to put it down there just so I can have something there, okay? All right, so I'm going to think, okay, where are my strongest memories? I definitely like this one, my first year of teaching, and I like this one because there's a lot that I can remember. I have a lot of very vivid memories from that time in my life. I narrowed it down to 2. You can narrow it down to more than 2, but you only have space on the back of the paper to narrow it down to 2. So what important memory will you write about? So thinking about our writing prompt, this is what you're writing about. So maybe I'll think about, okay, my first one I'm going to brainstorm about is when my brother went to rehab. And I might make a note to say I believe I was 12 at the time. I was in 7th. I was still 12 then. So I might write that down. How you reflect on your feelings. So there were a lot of feelings, so I'm just trying to capture all of them. The first thing I felt was confusion. I really didn't know what was going on. I noticed that my brother had changed a lot, and so when this news came to me, it was a lot to take in. And then that ultimately turned into anger. So I might expand on that. Didn't know, and then I was very mad at my brother and my family because we had to move. So I'll probably reflect on those feelings. Imagery. Now this is where your memoir really comes alive, because you want your reader to really be able to put themselves in that situation, to see and hear what you were feeling, in that moment. So I remember when my sister came over to my house, I was watching the Brady Bunch. I don't know if y'all know this, but I remember just hearing that in the laugh track and the characters' voices. And I don't know if this has ever happened to y'all, but sometimes when you're getting news that's so upsetting that like you kind of like you notice the strangest things. And all I could hear was this, and I was like zoned out for a while. And so I remember that being on the background. I know that I was in my living room. I remember my sister's face, and I've never seen my sister's face like that before. She'd been crying a lot, so her eyes were puffy, and her voice was cracking in a way I've never heard before. So all of these things I would want to include so I can make that moment come alive. And this would just be, okay, but then of course I would want to fast forward to the feeling of, getting into the moving truck and everything, and when I had to go to my new school and how hard that was for me. And all of those things I could definitely put in there as well. But this is just the beginning. So let's say like, okay, well, that's pretty strong. I have a lot of ideas. What if I want to go a different way? What if I want to focus on my first year of teaching? So I would put that here. First. And at that time I was 28. And feelings. Oh goodness, I was so nervous, but excited. And there were times when I was really stressed. But at the end of the year, like that kind of turned into, like I was really happy that with the choice I had made with my life. 3, I might remember the feeling of watching all of those faces, all these little 10-year-olds in front of me, how that felt, like the different kids that I might remember. I might describe them in detail. So I might think this kid won't stand out. Like I still remember, like I had this kid who had brown eyes but little speckles of green in his eyes. Like I might remember that. So this is what should look like. Again, I hope you didn't write this down with me because you are not writing my memoir. I am. This is going to be your pre-writing here. So the first thing you'll do is you'll fill out the front of the page. What kinds of things might you write about? And then narrow it down to 2 and then expand. What's the important memory? What feelings will you write about? And then what kind of imagery might you include?